We have argued in places people save their whole lives to visit, standing there thinking, how are we even arguing right now? And it makes you question whether travel is the problem or if it's just showing something deeper. And what if we don't agree on the answer?
I'm struggling.
I can't do this anymore.
He just doesn't see it the way I do. How do we keep travelling with this elephant in the room? I can feel it getting louder with every new place we visit. I need to bring it up.
I'm confused about what it even is anymore. I'm not present. Is this still us? Or are we slowly becoming two people trying to move through the same journey in different ways?
Sometimes it doesn't feel like a trip anymore. It feels like something we're just trying to survive.
Welcome to the Yalla Habibi podcast. I'm Scott.
And I'm Shelby.
We are a couple exploring what freedom looks like in a modern relationship. We are not here as experts, and we are definitely not the perfect couple. And for those who don't know, Shelby is our resident lexicographer and etymologist, also known on this podcast as the countdown legend Susie Dent.
Before we jump in, take the like button out for dinner, take the subscribe button on a cruise, give the podcast 5 tacos, and share the episode to the world. It genuinely helps us grow and keep making more series like this.
By the end of this episode, you'll either be planning your next flight or realizing the real journey is learning how to stay connected when nothing goes to plan.
Relationships, trauma, philosophy. Relationships, trauma, philosophy.
Was there ever a moment where we thought this might actually break us up?
Well, there were definitely duff moments. There were definitely moments where I don't know if I would go, well, let's get into it. We've definitely got some stories that we're going to share. Maybe you be the decider on that, but we'll both share our own opinions on that at the end of the episode. But definitely, there were some heated moments that I think if we didn't resolve, could have resulted in a future or no future.
We'll explore some stories of conflicts that we've experienced on our travels, and they're like kind of unique to traveling as well. So it's not just like typical pick your washing up arguments. It's like relevant to our travels, I would say.
Yeah, all of them have happened on our travels, and we're going to share how we resolved them, where we definitely went wrong, and where it could have gone even worse. And it's just the reality of conflict on the road, and how we've found ways of navigating it sometimes, and found ways of not navigating it, and how we sit with that today. And it's a real struggle for people. Conflict is a real challenge, and traveling full time have a lot of added stress, and definitely there is an increase of conflict. So let's get into it. So really, let's look into how we approach conflict. So, hey, I'll start. How ungentlemanly of me. I'm just trying to create conflict.
Well, let's say you start it, I'll finish it.
There you go. So for me, I'm very logical. I am quite, what I'd say, black and white thinking. I can change my decision on the dime of a hat. I'm very just ingrained in logic. It's just how I am. I'm also someone who likes to deal with conflict there and now. I'm not someone who sort of sits or in a challenge or a conflict in any way. I like to deal with it immediately, and my communication can be a bit blunt. It's not that I don't have a lot of love for the people around me. I'm just not that good at articulating my feelings all the time. But I am good at talking, and I prefer talking to people versus sort of going away and sitting on it. I like to just start conversing. The first 5 minutes might be a bit more blunt, but the following 10 minutes sort of gets to the real sort of crux of the problem. Crux?
Crooks, yeah.
Crux of the problem. Thank you, Susie. So yeah, that's me. Oh, one other final thing, which is something I've had to accept, is that if it's something that I can't really truly empathize with in the moment, then I struggle to not double down on my opinion, which can get me in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, so like as Scott just explained there, he's more logical, and I think will like almost like process things through that talking through. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, every decision in life And it definitely is a detriment to me as well. I accept that, but it's just sort of, I'm quite fixated on logic. But also, people can have different logic, so I know it can be challenging. But yeah, the best way to understand me is go, right, Scott, how did you get to that position? And then I'll break it down in my thinking, and then you know how to have a conversation with me is sort of at the core of how I approach things.
Yeah. And whereas I'm like, I need time to think about it before I talk about it. So I process things outside the moment. I'm very much kind of like I have a fight or flight response to conflicts, like, and I go with flight, and that is that I want to go away, understand what's happened, process what's happened, get to know how I feel about that situation before I talk about it. So it can come across as really avoidant, and I'm definitely demand avoidant. And particularly like if it's like, no, we need to talk about this now. But I'm like, well, I don't really know how I feel about it now. And like I feel like it's kind of rushed to discuss it in that way because then I think, well, it's kind of just like wanting to sweep. For me, it's almost like get it all out now and then forget about it. Whereas I'm like I will unpack things multiple times. Like I'll be like, well, this happened, so that means that, and then it's hard for me to not catastrophize and think, well, because this has happened once, it's going to happen again, and then I need to figure out how to prevent that from happening again before I can have the conversation to sort of put it to bed, sort of thing.
Yeah, so we have quite quite different ways, and you didn't mention you are demand avoidant.
I did mention it. You weren't listening.
I weren't listening. There we go. That's add that one to mine.
And I can prove it because it's recorded.
Funny girl. So, what does that mean for us? Well, really, for me, that means I need to be patient with Shelby. I need to look to address the issue later in time to give her time to process. And I definitely also need to consider it from a deeper perspective. If I'm thinking of doubling down on my thought process, I need to take some time to consider it from the other person's perspective to see if I still stand there. And really, the one I know I really struggle on is be mindful of the language I use so I don't trigger demand avoidance. And when you say language, I want to make it very clear, and I want you to back me up here. I do not swear. I do not raise my voice.
No, like it's never like, yeah, you never raised your voice to me, never swore at me.
No, I'm not. If anything, I'm strange because in many ways I'm conflict avoidant. Like family disputes, but between people who I really love, I really want to sort of face it head on. So that sounds like I don't love my family.
Did it?
Yeah, I do love my family. I don't know what I'm saying now. I do love my family. Sometimes it's easier to just not even bother because you know how they are. And I don't live with them anymore, so that it's a lot easier to ignore it. So what does this mean for us? So for me, that means I need to be more patient with Shelby to allow her to process the conflict, whatever was said. Also, I need to take a bit more time to consider it from a deeper perspective so I don't double down on something I may regret later. I'd also be mindful of the language I use so I don't trigger demand avoidance and sort of sensitivities. And I want to make clear, I don't mean language in foul language or raising the voice. It's just I'm a bit more to the point and I struggle to articulate myself at times. And whilst it's getting the point across, it's probably not the most sensitive. I don't know how to package that up without it sounding like I'm a twat. So I need you to now come in and finish it off for me.
Okay. Well, yeah, you've finish yours, I'll start mine.
Finish mine.
Finish
You need to be backing me up. You haven't backed me up yet. At the moment, I sound like an arsehole. I need you to back me up. And now I've asked you to back me up, which means I'm definitely an arsehole.
No, you're very good.
Oh, that's not convincing at all.
You are such a good listener, and you are so patient, and you are so emotionally available. Like, you're smashing it as a partner. And I think there's just certain things that I find triggering, such as, like, I think any particular women feel triggered by stuff like calm down. as a Lancaster, for
Oh,
example.
yeah.
So that, like, although it might, from your point of view, might be like, I seem elevated emotionally, so you might sincerely mean, like, calm down, let's talk about it. But I hear calm down, and that's triggering to my demand avoidance, because I'm like, I'll calm down when I feel like calming down. Is that what you mean by the...
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it's more how I articulate things. Like if I'm trying to articulate my point, I'm just very much to the point.
Mm,
So I just say how I feel,
yeah.
but it's just not that eloquently said. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah. But that's something that I have to learn and accept with you as well. And like, because that's how you communicate in those moments. And like how I receive that communication is like another matter, is it? Like that's, we need to be kind of meet in the middle, don't we? So like the way that you communicate is the way that you communicate. And that if I find that upsetting, then I need to make an effort to be more cognizant of the fact that's how you communicate, and you need to be more cognizant of the fact that that can be hurtful to me. So like, it's all about us meeting in the middle. It's not all about like one person having a communication style that's wrong, or kind of meeting in the middle.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's very much a relationship, isn't it? It's that give and take. I think what can be really hard is accepting that even though when you find the person you want to be with for the rest of your life and you love them, I think what's a tricky thing to accept, and I'm just this is me where I'm going to be straight up, is there are going to be qualities that you don't like. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I
Like,
don't like it, but it's fair.
yeah, but that is the reality. Like best friends, there are qualities of best friends that you just don't align on, that just might really irritate you. Like it's just no one's gonna be perfection, and I think relationships are a big part of understanding where that comes from and understanding everything around that. And once you do, whilst it doesn't disappear, you don't get triggered by it as much because you go, okay, he's like that because of his upbringing. It's not, and I know he doesn't mean anything bad about it. It's just how he communicates, or that's just how she deals with conflict. It's not a thing personal to you. It's just how she or he has learned to deal with that specific thing, or learn, and that's fine. That is who that person is. If it's something that's causing harm to you on a daily basis, well, that's a bigger problem. But these things that we're showing aren't. But initially, yes. But we started to go, oh, that's how she approaches conflict. And you'd say the same for me.
Definitely. And that, like, I need to recognize that your logical thought process is how you, like, approach things. Like, I know that you're not intending to be harmful with your directness. And I think being mindful of that and, like, how you're going to interpret situations is going to be different to me. And I need to not, because of my, like, the way that I process, I could happily come back to it the next day, but I know that will be torture for you.
It is, yes.
So, you know, I need to be mindful of coming back to you and not waiting too long before we talk about it.
Yeah. We're always learning.
Well, yeah.
But that gives you some insight into us, okay? So that's insight on how we approach conflict and what that really means. So now you know a bit more about us, and maybe you can relate to some of that. Let's get into some stories. But before we do get into our 3 stories of the episode, make sure you do stick around, because we've got some really great stories in our segments coming up. In Scott's WTF of the week, we'll actually be learning about the new viral term Alpine divorce, which I just learned today, and the recent stories of this with deadly consequences. The story attached to this, what's scary about it is I've seen it happen before, but I didn't know that could be the result of it.
Yeah.
So like it's freaked me out a bit.
It was very shocking. And then, of course, in my segment, Shelby's Good Vibes Only, you can learn about some certain strategies for communicating well when traveling.
I'm excited to hear it. Maybe it'll help us with these stories.
Maybe you will.
We probably needed to read it before. Okay, so story 1. So where do we I think you should do this story because it's more personal to you, I guess.
Yes. Okay. Well, so we have, we've traveled together for a couple of years now, but with working, it's kind of, we've managed to sort of fit around each other. Now I'm like, because we're working at a UK time zone and I'm teaching online, and Scott starts a little bit later than me, and he likes to get a workout in before he starts work, but that can often coincide with me being on lessons. So the thing is, when Scott works out, he sometimes swears and makes what can only be described as sexual noises.
They're workout noises, just like a UFC fighter would make to throw a punch, or a tennis player would make
They're very,
to win the final of Wimbledon. So I am an athlete,
uh-huh.
and athletes need to eject energy with noise.
So yeah, so that's, from my point of view, when I'm trying to work and concentrate, I'm also quite worried because I teach. So it's like I'm worried that those sounds will be heard by students.
Yeah, so I wasn't even conscious of this because for the longest time I'd worked out in lots of strange different Airbnbs and hotels in very close vicinity to Shelby. So I didn't even pick up this was a problem. And it probably went on for quite some time before you probably mentioned it.
Yeah.
That's why I think so. So for me, that's what's happening. But when it initially got raised, I felt quite frustrated with it and sort of felt it was a little overblown because it had not been mentioned before. And also, I'm not always conscious of all the noises I'm making because sometimes I've got headphones on and I'm not even aware I'm making like a heavy breathing noise.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're in a house, that's not really a big issue because you're in completely different sides of the house. But we're traveling and sometimes we're in a studio and it's a very small studio packed with everything, and you can hear even a whisper on a Teams meeting.
Yeah. So I guess we are adapting.
Yeah, well, we did adapt, but that was the initial friction, right? So that was there. So there was an initial sort of aggravation from me. But I'll be honest, I think we quite quickly adapted. I probably I had a bit of a strop about it, but then I realized, well, I can work out quite flexibly because it's actually only an issue for two of my workouts a week because the rest are all outside. So I thought, okay, well, that's not really a big shift. I have to shift it by like, what, 40 minutes. And then all of a sudden it's in Shelby's lunch. So when I looked at it objectively, I was like, oh, Scott, you only have to do twice a week and you're talking a 40-minute difference. It just wasn't a big issue, but it was making you feel quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, and also uncomfortable to request it as well because of the nature of my work and then the nature of your work, it does feel like I'm always the one asking you to compromise, and that doesn't feel fair. It couldn't go the other way because there's literally nothing else short of going and sitting outside. I'm not able to make the compromise in that situation to make it a comfortable environment. Do you know what I mean? So like, yeah, it was uncomfortable for me to have the situation, but equally, I feel guilty about. I feel like I quite often have to ask you to compromise around my work.
I don't know what to say to that. But I mean, I want to support you. I don't know. Do I say I agree with that step? Well, I guess, but I don't know if that's right for me to say. But yes, okay. Do I have to compromise? Well, yes, for your work, but I'm happy to. I can be a lot more flexible with my work. Even if I'm on a meeting, there's nothing you're going to be doing in the background that's going to be a real problem. Even a bit of clang in the kitchen isn't terrible, but you have quite sensitive. It's quite sensitive what you do, and you're dealing with young children, so that's
Yeah.
a whole different ball game. So anyway, if we didn't figure this out, I mean, it would have carried on.
Yeah.
Two, you might have got reported.
Yeah.
And three, I would just got more annoyed because I'd be like, well, for 2 years you've not mentioned anything. So lucky we figured it out. So there definitely was a bit of friction there. Side note, Shelby just farted.
Oh, no, Scott didn't. It was very loud and smelly.
Okay, let's see who they believe. Okay, so let's get into another story, which is a very common one for couple travelers, and that is the differing of opinions and needs for accommodation. This is most definitely going to happen. Cost versus comfort. So where do I sit on that? It would be interesting to see if you can guess before I say it. So do put it in the comments if you can. But I definitely err on the side of less spend. So how do I operate on it? I very much I do the balance of essentials and cost saving. So for me, the non-negotiables are air conditioning, strong Wi-Fi, a fully equipped kitchen, and privacy. They're like ones that I wouldn't cheap out on. Outside of that, I'm willing to drop the extra amenities like a pool, a more attractive location, or maybe 24-hour reception, whatever. Like, I'm happy to drop them. Now and then, if maybe it's a special week or a special place, sure, I'm happy to spend a bit more to make it a bit more special. But for the most part, because we're doing this continuously, I don't want to do that. I want to have my money saved. And the main reason for me is because I want to be able to carry on the travel and also have money when we go back home.
Mm. And so the thing is, I fully agree with everything that you've said. I don't dispute it. I don't fault the logic. I don't disagree with the logic or the sentiment. But I think I sway towards spending a little bit more to get a little bit nicer place. Like if there's nothing fundamentally different about them other than I quite prefer the decorations in one of them, then I'd still sway towards, even if it's like a £50 difference or whatever for the week, I'd sway towards the one that looked a bit nicer. Whereas I think, Scott, if all things being equal, you would always choose the cheaper option.
Definitely.
And that I do think that my opinion on that has changed a bit. And I do think that I've given in more to the cheap but functional accommodations that we book. But I'm a bit of a nester, and I like to feel like I'm at home everywhere. So like I want a place that's going to make me feel like I can make it my own for the time that we're there. And I know you mentioned the kitchen. That's super important to me, that it's got a kitchen that I can use. Like we've definitely been in ones that it's not worked out that way.
No, a lot of BBs will say, "Oh, I've got a fully kitchen," and they've got like 2 spoons, a pan, and plug-in stove. No microwave, no kettle, no anything. A small fridge. And like, Jesus, what do I do with this?
Yeah, like we were in one in Saudi Arabia that the microwave didn't have the glass plate that goes inside it, and they didn't have any microwavable plates either that we could use.
Yeah, there was not much health and safety. There was also cigarette stains all over the apartment.
Yeah.
So the result of it, is how did we resolve this? Well, like you said, I think you've come closer to my way of thinking.
Yeah.
At the core, I'm more of a penny pincher. I still will spend quite a bit on experiences. I don't hold off money on if it's something I want to do and there's something special, I'm doing it. Like I'm willing to spend the money, but if I can save money, I'm also blowing well doing it.
Yeah.
Not at the detriment of anything major, but if there's a place I can save, because it does all count. So, but I think because you've sort of moved on your mindset, when we approach it the same, when we look for accommodation, we look for the best cheap option. So we're not looking for like the best option. We look for what is the best cheap option. So then when we come together, we're very similar on price now. And we're also quite logically aligned, and you're good at going deeper because you're good at unfolding things. If let's say there's an accommodation that's £100 more because it's centrally located, my initial feeling in the past would have been no bloody way. But then Shelby's opened my eyes to, but if you look at the taxis and the cost there, all of a sudden we're going to be spending £200 on taxis anyway. So I think for me, this works because it's all logic based.
Yeah.
And you seem okay with that now.
Definitely. And like even in the start when we're looking at hotels and stuff, the hotels could be significantly cheaper than Airbnbs. But then we realised, well, hang on a minute, but we're going to have to buy every single meal out if we stay in a hotel. So yeah, it's looking at what you are and aren't willing to compromise on, really. And like there are times where, you know, we spent a good amount of money on a night in the Versace hotel in Dubai, like so and that was an experience in and of itself.
Yeah.
And that was like intentional though. So it's like not out of, like, if you think about it, if you're going to be traveling all year or for a few months even, that extra £100-200 could get you an extra month somewhere. Like, so it does. You got to think, I'm borrowing from future trips. If I spend that now, I'm borrowing from a future opportunity.
And that's how I see it. So I'm happy that we're aligned. So, an interesting side note, if we weren't able to resolve this, finances happens to be the biggest reason for divorce. So, yeah, it's not an easy thing. In a relationship, finances are complex and stressful. And I would say we've still not figured it out 100% for everything. But I think we're doing all right.
I think we do, Mal.
Yeah.
I think we are definitely meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
So, story 3. Well, this is an interesting one. Because when we were in Hanoi, and this might sound like the most minuscule of arguments, but when you're traveling and you're in an unfamiliar place, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're bothered, like you're trying to figure things out, you are mentally overloaded. And so what on a good day might be a small thing could feel like quite a big thing. And this is a perfect example of that. We were in a taxi going to the of Ho Chi Minh, which is actually in Hanoi itself.
Well remembered.
Thank you. Rather than in Ho Chi Minh City. It's actually in Hanoi. Well worth visit, side note. But as we were driving around and, like, you know, all looking out the window, oh, look at that, look at this, look at that. It's got like, oh, look, plastic surgery place there. And so I said, oh, why are you telling me that? What should I have done? And he went, everything.
I still find it funny.
I'm glad you find it funny. Because I know that the listener doesn't know what I look like. And
She's hot as F.
Thank you. I mean, that's not... Well, anyway. Throughout all my life, I've been bullied for my appearance by others and myself. So to have the person I love most tell me that my physical appearance should be changed entirely, even as a joke, in that moment was really hurtful. And because Scott didn't immediately say, I'm obviously joking, you're gorgeous, or something to that effect, it just sort of sat there. And like I said something like, oh, I don't like that. And you said something like, get over it, or like whatever, I don't know, like what would have, like it was a joke or whatever it was said. I was really hurt by it.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw it as a harmless joke. And so I just felt the reaction was overblown. I was like, it's a joke. Like, what's going on here? So I thought you were almost joking at how serious that it had hurt you. So, as I mentioned at the start, when I don't sort of empathize with someone on that, not that because I didn't see the seriousness in it, I doubled down. And that made it much worse.
Yeah. So, like, I take it to, you know, and I felt like I'd expressed that I was hurt by what he said. And from my point of view, like, if I'd said something and I'd hurt Scott's feelings in it, I'd want to apologise immediately that it's not my intention. I'm sorry that you're upset. You know, if I didn't see why, I'd want to be empathetic to the fact that he felt hurt by it. I'm not saying I'm sure there's many times that I've failed at that, but that would be, you know, my hope as partners is that when one of us says to the other, actually that hurt, even if we don't understand it, like, I think it's important that we approach it from a point of view of, okay, well, that was not my intention. I'm really sorry that you hurt. It was not, I didn't intend to hurt you. And didn't mean it that way. It was meant entirely as a joke. And I can see now that it's upset you and that the joke wasn't okay. But you were kind of like, I'm not going to be monitored by what I can and can't joke about. And humour's subjective.
Humour is subjective.
I do agree with that. But I think it was going in a hole and you're like, stand up makes fun of whoever. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm your partner. I'm not your audience member.
Yeah, yeah, different conversation, but yeah, I do believe comedians can poke on anything, but yeah, the key thing that you said though, which I have learnt more recently at a deeper level, is it's a very simple trick that anyone can do. Is the second someone says, "I feel," it's time to stop sort of judging them and start listening. It's so simple. When someone told me that recently, they said, once you hear the words from your loved one, your friend, whoever, say, "I feel," everything stops. Doesn't matter where your head is, it's the fact that they're about to be vulnerable and they're about to share real emotion. So, yeah,
Good advice.
yeah, it was good. And it was actually quite recent. And yes, so I'm trying to sort of preach that now. But it can be hard when you can't see it from the other person's perception.
Perspective.
Thank you, Susie. When you can't see it from the other person's perspective, and it's a very quick thing as well, when it's not a long conversation that you can have and sort of break it down. When it's something small, I think it's way easier to fall into the trap of just doubling down and like being like, get over it, because there's not enough time to really sit back and sort of think about it. So I accept today that I'm going to fall into it again and again for the rest of our partnership. But I also know I'll get better.
Absolutely. And we just grow together, don't we?
Yeah.
We just grow. Obviously, if we didn't resolve this, that could have been, I could have just truly believed that you thought that I was hideous and needed lots of plastic surgery.
I think that one would, whilst it is micro in the grand scheme of our relationship in life, I think that is one of those things that would sort of build upon resentment. It would have been one of those sort of things in a relationship which would have added to future resentment.
Yeah, I think it would have been like in the back of my mind that, and then any other perceived criticism of my appearance, I would have been like, that would have been confirmation to me that you don't actually find me attractive.
Yeah.
Which I know is ridiculous because you wouldn't be with me, but.
Well, that exactly. But that's how resentment works, isn't it? It's a strange thing. A lot of divorces, they get to, I mean, the amount of divorces where by the end of it, if you sit down and have a conversation with them both, they just have completely different perspectives and completely different stories. My parents are a great example of this. There's just like, it's like you're talking to two people on across the other side of the world who've never met each other. It's like, what? Who's right? Who's telling the truth? Like, it's just like, but I think it does get to a point that it is what happens. It does get to a point where both sides think they're 100% right. And that's where it gets tricky, because like, what do you do? So yeah, I think resentment's a strange one. I think it can build up and you don't fully sort of remember all the moments, but it becomes a feeling.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the question that we had at the start is, was there ever a moment where we thought this might actually break us up?
Dun dun dun.
So there were definitely many uncomfortable moments that lasted, and many which lasted much longer than they should have. And we could have approached them differently, but I would say none of them were ever truly going to break us, or felt like they would at the time, but some were definitely more difficult than others.
Absolutely. And I just think that the more we know each other, like, I don't know. I don't want to be like, oh, this is how we do things and everyone should do it. Like, but yeah, I think that I think we are quite good at arguing compared to some. I don't think we're.
Oh, be careful. We're not a guru podcast.
We are not.
I want to make that clear, and we're not a perfect couple.
No, we're not, but I'm perfectly anyway, what I was going to get at was that sometimes when we're disagreeing, we'll like hold hands and like remind each other that, look, wait, I still love you. You're still my best friend. Like, let's figure it out, sort of thing. And it can be hard in the moment to do that, but I think that we are both growing, and I think we can both be big enough to try and take and not every time, but I think it's trying to take the ego out of the argument, isn't it? And like combat, like you're both against the issue, not against each other. And it can be really hard to remember that in the moment.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as far as saying we're better than anyone else. You might want to say that. But no,
We're the best couple in the world.
well, I think you've got to think that sometimes to believe in yourselves. But no, I think sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong.
Yes, that's
Sometimes there's some days where like we've bloody smashed that.
Mm.
Like we've managed to resolve that and not get lost in ego. Then there's other days where we
behave like children.
behave like children. So yeah, we can have perfect days, but we also have crap days.
Yeah.
So wrapping this up is and don't remember, we do have our segment that's coming, but really, what have we learned about traveling together and how can it help couples overcome conflict as a barrier to full-time travel? So I would say it's 3 things that we've drilled it down to. So let's go for it. So number 1, give each other the space to operate on your own sometimes. That means, for example, letting each other individually relax. So you go off and watch a Netflix film, they go off and watch a Netflix film, or even separately catch up with friends. Shelby goes on the phone to her friend for the next 2 hours while I'm watching Netflix, whatever. Eat separately. Maybe Shelby wants to have a pizza. I really don't feel like it. Okay, Shelby's going to go out having a pizza. I'm just going to have what's in the fridge. And yeah, even have, and this seriously, have experiences on your own, even over multiple days. There have been many times where I've left Shelby for multiple days in the mountains. And at first we were a bit more hesitant to do some of this, especially having our individual experiences. But I found giving each other that space to operate on your own individually is massive.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Don't chase experiences every weekend. Start with the second point. Full-time travel needs to be treated like a lifestyle, not a holiday. So that means that you could have weekends of doing nothing and just going to the cinema, doing things that you would do at home on a lazy weekend. And that's super important because if you think that you're traveling for, I don't know, 3 months, let's say, you might think, oh, every single weekend I've got to do this, that, or the other, like if you're working through the week. But your enjoyment of that is going to be way more if you do occasionally take a day or so to just chill and do normal things.
Definitely. I actually find that the hardest. It's taken us for sure 2 years to do that. 2 years of not doing that. It's just really hard to quell your ego in not wanting to do every experience. But finally, the big third one would be identify your travel triggers early. What are these? And I would go as far as writing them down. So for example, my travel triggers are lack of sleep, food, mornings, I don't like them. After a hard work day, I just can't take a lot on for like the first hour after a hard work day. So if you're going to blitz me with loads of questions and say, should we do it? I'm just going to get aggravated. Being too hot. If the aircon ain't working, Scott's going to be more agitated. And not getting my daily exercise in agitates me.
Yep, and for me, some similar ones, like lack of sleep, if it's noisy, if the food isn't good, like like certain places have been really difficult to find vegan food, so that can be irritating to me, or like if we don't have the capacity to make it, if I'm too cold, or if I feel like it's not a safe area, like if I don't feel like I can walk about or get about on my own without Scott, I get really irritated by that, like if I just feel trapped.
Yeah, so again, we've taken years to figure these out, but the great thing is once you do figure them out, then you can write them down, because once you know them, if when you're having an argument, you look at the triggers and say, right, are any of these present right now? If any are present instantly, you want to just dissolve the conversation a bit. Right, let's deal with that trigger, because I know right now you're really cold and you've not eaten, so we need to fix that because you're not going to be in the right headspace. So it's understand, are any of the triggers present? If they are, deal that trigger, because I can guarantee you it's a big driver of the emotion. So yeah, that really wraps up sort of how we've operated and honest stories. I hope you've enjoyed them, and definitely add in the comments any that you've had and maybe how you resolve them, or maybe how it didn't go well. I know that can happen. But let's get into Scott's WTF of the week. Every week the world gets a little weirder. Let's talk about the strangest thing that went down this week. Alpine divorce is a term that originated in German-speaking hiking culture. That's quite a mouthful. Popularized by the Alpiner. Susie?
Scheidungsgrund.
That sounds Japanese. But it doesn't look Japanese on paper. But anyway, it was popularized by a German hiker. And it has recently actually gone viral online. And what it does is it describes when one partner, often the more experienced or faster hiker, actually abandons the other mid-hike during conflict or frustration. And sometimes this can happen in risky conditions. I know I've seen this on hikes. I'm an avid hiker, and I see there's a lot where there's a couple that thought it was going to be a great day out. Usually it is the man. He's pumping ahead. He goes past me quite brisk, looking a little bit fed up. Just you could tell he's properly laser focused on the hike. Then a minute later, a woman flustered and red in her face with things falling out pockets, like not enjoying herself. I know it's quite stereotyped, but that's mostly what it is, is how it is. And it's a shame. But there's been some real situations recently that have been reported by a couple of people that have had some pretty effed up consequences. So let's go through. There's three here, but I'm going to go through two. So Naomi, I wish I knew where Naomi was from, but Naomi was recently, so she was on a hike with her partner, and she was actually struggling with altitude sickness, which that can be really quite tough and dangerous if you don't acclimatize correctly. Then that can be a serious problem. And basically and it's a multi-day trek, so there's no way you can go. Anyway, her partner got fed up. They had a bit of an argument, and he basically just disowned her for one of the days, walked off. She didn't know where she was going, and it just forced her to continue alone in a physically dangerous conditions, far from help. She was less used to the hiking. And that's pretty effed up, because we're talking a multi-day hike, not a single day hike. That's quite a big differentiator here. And at altitude, you've got to team up when it comes to those sort of elements, because things can go wrong quickly. So that is, whoever her partner is, I wish it had his name in this article. Fuck that guy.
Well, it's just so negligent, isn't it? Like, he would have known that she was experiencing altitude sickness, that is difficult. If he's an experienced hiker, he's going to know that. Like, most people know that. And to just then leave her, I think it's pretty reckless and thoughtless.
Yeah, it's messed up. And guess what? It gets even more messed up. This is the one that absolutely shocked me. And I'm going to need you again in a minute, Susie. So, on a winter ascent, it gets harder, these environments, of Austria's highest mountain.
Großglockner.
That person, a climber, left his exhausted, hypothermic partner just below the summit at 2 a.m. How does this even get worse? And despite having emergency gear, he failed to wrap her in a thermal blanket or place her in a bivy bag, which would give her windproof. And he delayed calling for help, and even told rescuers they didn't need assistance while a helicopter was already monitoring their situation. So, it just aggravates me. Like,
so many no's.
So many no's. And it gets worse. She later died of hypothermia. And I guess luckily, or unluckily, he was convicted of manslaughter in February this year.
Yeah, well, I think it was like manslaughter through, like, is it gross negligence, I'm guessing? Like, because he's been in a position where he could have saved her, they've offered help and he said, no, we don't need it. And he's left her up a mountain to freeze to death.
Yeah, I think that would go down as that. Especially, I think the big one is him not accepting help.
That's
Like,
wild to me.
that is
Wild.
someone who has really. It's not even dropping the ball. It's like, I have no responsibility for you. If you die, that's on you. That is like gross negligence, and that is, yeah, it's. I've not heard of someone's going to prison for this, but I think there is some justification here because I mean a woman's died.
Yeah, well, and
And he
he
could
had
have
the
saved her.
means to have done something about it, didn't it? Like,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that they had the thermal and the bivy and in contact with helicopter, like she obviously must not have been in any kind of state to say, yes, I need a helicopter. And then he's like, what, going back down the mountain to find someone? Just get the help, like get the helicopter. So whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. But it irritates me because like you've said, I've seen it time and time again where couples go on hikes and usually the male partner is yomping on ahead and leaving his partner behind. And I just think the article itself is really interesting though, isn't it? Like from The Guardian, they like say that like it's a mental thing. Like, so it's stereotyping massively, but I feel like women who go on hikes with their partner is almost like a bonding experience, unless they're an avid hiker themselves. But if they're going with their hiker partner, who they don't normally go with, it's not to get to the highest mountain, it is to get some exercise, be outside with them. Whereas I think sometimes in these situations, like the lead hiker is like solely focused on getting to the top of that mountain and not really caring about the other person getting there.
Exactly. So be careful. Be careful. Alpine divorce is a real thing. So it seems like today we have a word for everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep an eye out for it if your partner is trying to Alpine divorce you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, lovely story, darling. Well, not so lovely, but interesting story. Now it's time for Shelby's Good Vibes Only. Let's take a break from the chaos. Here's something to make you smile this week. Shelby's Good Vibes Only. According to a study on couples' travel decision making, involving 371 couples, quite a large study, those who made decisions together or took turns leading reported significantly higher satisfaction with their trips. The research found that it wasn't about who made the decisions, but how they were made. Couples who kept decisions low conflict and shared felt more aligned and communicated more effectively overall. So rather than approaching it from well, I want to do this, well, I want to do that, it'd be a case of either talking things through. It sounds simple, but I guess it's not because so many people fight when they travel. But about either saying, you make the decision on this, I'm happy for you to do that, I know that what you decide we're going to enjoy, and then the other person taking a turn, or just reaching a conclusion together. I guess it's more complicated than it sounds. So many couples don't do it. But the main takeaway is that better communication while traveling isn't just about talking more, it's about sharing that control in a way that makes both people feel heard. So it should never just be one person's, I do this, this, and this, and then the other person going, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, taking turns to be the leader on that, or making sure that everyone's getting a favourable outcome in it.
So yeah, you've got to just balance the responsibilities, I guess. Which would have been important for Alpine divorce if you...
Exactly.
So, it's a strange world we live in. But there's news of the day, relevant news to the conflict. Let us know if you like that. But really, where does this leave us? So what happens to us when this keeps unfolding across the journey? One thing we know, on the road, nothing stays contained. Small friction under constant pressure doesn't fade. It compounds until it turns into something neither of you recognizes anymore. In the next episode, we'll explore how constant decision-making and different planning styles can quietly shift a relationship into something darker, where one partner starts to feel controlled and trapped inside choices made without them. We'll meet you there. Another adventure wrapped up.
But the journey never ends.
Keep your bags packed for the next one. And remember, when in doubt, just say, Yalla
Yalla
Habibi,
Habibi,
see you next time.